Well, I'm delighted to say that joining me on the Godcast this week is Pete Williams, who is a well-known musician who has been in bands such as Dexys Midnight Runners. He is a multi-talented musician. So, Pete, it's fabulous to get you on. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks, Alex, and that's good of you to say all that stuff. And thanks for asking me. It's a pleasure.
You've still got that black country accent about you. Have you always frequented the black country? Have you ever ventured far away?
I've travelled quite a bit, but the Black Country, yeah. I mean, some might argue that I've still got my accent. I think I'm probably considered a bit posh around these parts, but I think that's just having to be kind of understood. I still remember the first time I heard first time I was interviewed on Radio One back in the early days of Dexys, and just being shocked at how broad I sounded. And how people could understand me, and I suppose I've tempered it so that you can be understood and all that. No, I'm from the Black Country, and I still live in a little place called Bearwood on the edge of the Black Country, really close to Birmingham. But I've lived all over. I've spent time in Ireland, and I went out to Los Angeles and stayed with Stoker, who's the drummer who lives out there. I tried that for a few months. But no, mostly, and I've worked a lot in London doing rehearsals and stuff like that, and lots of recording. Sheffield's a town I'm very fond of. That's where I've recorded all my albums. But it's a strong piece of elastic that pulls me back to the Black Country.
Yeah.
Although we are considering upping and doing a little bit of... me and Debbie, my wife, we're thinking about doing a bit of traveling, throwing ourselves at Europe, if we can.
Yeah.
But no, the Black Country it's a strong bond, I think.
Yeah, I think it's quite natural, isn't it? I grew up in Burnley, so and I love it here, and I'm always drawn to the northwest. People often say, "Would you move away?" But I don't think I would actually. I'm very happy where I am. Now let's take a little bit of a trip down memory lane, Pete. What was life like growing up for you? Was your family musical? Were they musicians in any way?
My dad was on my dad's side of the family. It's Welsh roots, and my dad was a violinist as a boy, and my uncle was a pianist. My uncle Stan. And music was always around. It was a big part of all around the piano, and singing songs, beers on the piano, Christmas parties, any excuse for the Williams side of the family to sing. So it was around. My brother was encouraged. There was a piano in my house, and my brother was encouraged. My elder brother Andrew was encouraged in that. And I've got lots of memories of my dad standing over him saying, timing, Andrew, timing." And he's just pretty strict. And he had lessons. And I was given a clarinet. My dad came back from work one day, and I think somebody at where he was working gave him a clarinet. So they couldn't get on with the clarinet. When I was about 11, and I just started my secondary school, and then you could have lessons. So and get out of maths, more importantly, for 25 minutes in those days. And I'm thankful to that, because I learned to read, and I still play the clarinet. I love the clarinet, or the misery stick, or the tube of gloom, as it's called, if I get it out with the boys in the band. But there was always music around, yeah. And Sunday mornings were always Sinatra records or Shirley Bassey or something like that. Always played in our house.
I was going to ask Pete, but you maybe alluded to the answer here, where you said Sunday mornings were about Shirley Bassey. Was there any religion in the Pete Williams household? Were your parents, of a certain genre age, were they religious people?
They weren't really, Alex. And it wasn't. Although we went. Me and my brother were packed off. We did attend Sunday school for about 6 months, but I think that was because the chap who used to run the Sunday school classes in the local community hall where we lived on our street, and they'd have the Sunday school anniversary, and there's pictures of me in a blazer that my mum made for me. Mum used to make clothes, but there was nothing. There was no we weren't really a religious family, which is unusual because of the Welsh roots, I suppose, in a way. But not really. I mean, there was lots of love and in our house, and Mum was raised up in the prairies of Canada until she was 16 and moved back to the Black Country. And I always felt Mum in particular was a very spiritual kind of person and loved nature. But as far as any formal religious upbringing, it's a funny thing. Years later, I was going out with a girlfriend of mine, Moira, from Enniskillen in Northern Ireland, and we went to visit a friend of hers about 1981 in West Belfast, and a kid was running past me, a kid about 10, and he ran past me. We were walking along the street, and he stopped and he said, "Are you a proddy dog?" And I went, "I don't know, mate." And I really didn't know. I was 21. Proddy dog. I knew that was slang for Protestant.
Yeah.
And I said, "I don't know, mate." I said, "I think I'm Church of England." And he went, "Right, you wait there," and ran off. And Maura said, "We better clear off and make ourselves scarce." And actually, we went to visit a friend. But
and what?
The funny thing, it never really, my other half, Debbie, was raised from Liverpool, was raised Catholic and had to attend mass and did a first communion and all that stuff, but not really, not my family, not really.
And what music were you listening to as a young kid, Pete? What was your kind of?
Well, music, I didn't take a great deal of notice of music. I do remember hearing the first single that was bought for me was Voodoo Child by Jimi Hendrix, just because, and I remember, and that must have been when I was about 10, when it came out, 10 or 11. And I just remember hearing it. It was just made such an effect on me, such a mad sound. But I had that, and then it wasn't until a few years later, which kind of coincided with puberty hitting me, that I took an interest, and I used to sit in there, listen to the charts on a Sunday in the car that we had. Mum and Dad had let me sit in the car and listen to the charts. And that was like, I was a Bowie nut. As soon as I heard David Bowie, I was a big fan. I joined his fan club. I was a Bowie freak. And he signed up to the only fan club I've ever joined, and I used to get a brown manila envelope with the photo in the news and stuff like that. So I loved Bowie. I loved all the glam stuff that was happening. Slade and T-Rex and all that stuff, as you'd expect of somebody my age. Music kind of hit me along with puberty when I was about 13 or 14, something like that.
And was your intention, once you'd become a young musician, was your intention to be in a band? Was that the goal?
Yeah, it was really. I bought a bass guitar when I was 14 off a kid at school, and I didn't know that you needed an amplifier. I think I'd seen, or I did have the paperback book of That'll Be the Day, Ray Connolly's That'll Be the Day, which was a film with David Essex. And at the end of that, he buys a bass guitar from the shop. And I think, looking back, I think that influenced me. There was so much in that book that I used to like at the time, like fairgrounds. I used to love the fair coming around and stuff like that. So I bought a guitar, and it's funny touching on religion, because the first band that we formed, there was a mate of mine, Mickey Keith, who lived on Whiteheath on the estate where I'm from, and he bought a guitar. He was a year older than me. He bought a guitar. I got a bass guitar at 14, there's a friend, another friend of ours, Anthony, who got literally got biscuit tins and Tupperware tubs. And if Mick, whose family were Irish, a lot of Irish people on the estate at Whiteheath where I grew up, if he attended mass on a Sunday, then Father Bell would let us rehearse there on a Monday evening in the church. So and he kind of hated going to mass, but he did it so that we could rehearse. And that was our first age of about 14, and we just used to goof around, really. Played the riff from from 20th Century Boy or something like that over and over again, and tried 12 bar blues and get our heads around music. But that was, like I say, that was, if we went to mass, we could, the Father Bell would let us use the English Martyrs Catholic Church in Whiteheath, where I'm from.
And as a guy who did his growing up in the 80s, Pete, I can only look, I'm a huge Depeche Mode fan. There's a picture, if anybody's watching, where my finger is, of the guys from Depeche there. But the early 80s, it was, I was on the move musically, what I was liking, and Madness was probably the first band as a 10, 11-year-old kid that caught my eye. And then Dexys came along, and I remember being absolutely enthused by this band that was similar to Madness in many ways. It was a large group of guys and ladies, but I couldn't pigeonhole Dexys. What was it about Dexys? Just perhaps share us how you became part of that setup, Pete, but actually about the creation of the music, because it was a bit like ska, but it was a bit folky, and I just couldn't pigeonhole it. I still can't pigeonhole it, really. So if you're happy to just share a bit about
that. Yeah, I mean, where to start? I mean, punk rock happened. I think the thing with Dexys, Dexys Midnight Runners, was there were a group of us, kind of mostly in the rhythm section, that came out of punk rock. I saw the Sex Pistols in 1977. Me and Kevin Archer, who was at the school with me. He was in a year above me at school. And that was a massive influence on us. We instantly formed a punk band called The Negatives, a power trio, playing stuff 100 miles an hour, and recorded a demo in Birmingham. Kevin Rowland was in a band called the Killjoys at the time that we were aware of. We used to go to a club called Barbarella's and see that. And anyway, Kevin Archer, my friend, left the Negatives to join the Killjoys. I was happy for him. They got a tour. He was a mate of mine. I was genuinely pleased for him, even though the Negatives were no more. But it was if you pardon the French, it was the arse end of punk rock, really. We could, and the time was right for something else to start. So I think the thing with Dexys Midnight Runners was there was an element of the urgency and the kind of rough edges of punk rock, especially in the rhythm section. That is the vocalist Kevin came out of the Killjoys, and so it got that urgency. But we'd also got young guys that in the brass section who were more classically trained, let's put it that way. And we just, and it was decided, this is Kevin's idea, really. We were looking, the Killjoys were looking for a direction to go into. The Killjoys split up. And I was asked by Kevin Archer and Kevin Rowland if I wanted to be part of it. And I went along and played. And the idea was we're gonna do something that's based on 1960s soul. So we're going to immerse ourselves in Atlantic soul, Stax records, all of that, all the classic soul. Just immerse ourselves in that, but write about contemporary themes and stuff like that, and appeal to a contemporary audience. So it's the marrying of that kind of you know, I think that the first album especially retains that kind of urgency. It's pretty, and it's also the way that we heard things. You know, we like the B-side of Geno was a song called "Breaking Down the Walls of Heartache," and I remember me and Kev Archer going around to a pub in Blackheath, where it was on the jukebox with our guitars, with heads against the jukebox, picking out what the notes and working out the chords. And when I listen to some of those, the recordings of the couple of cover versions, another one at Point in Casey's Break is 7 Days Is Too Long. The bass line and even the chord structure is quite different from what's on the record. We weren't trying to copy it, and it's the way that we heard it in a way. And if I did that now, I'd do it differently now that I've played for years and years. But it was how we kind of heard things and interpreted things. I think that's what gave it its kind of uniqueness or its otherness. Yeah, I mean, with Madness, there was such a variety. You know, we knew Madness, and there were similarities. We used to bunk the trains like they did, the tube, jump over the barriers, get everywhere. That was, and I remember speaking to Suggsy at the Music Machine about that. No, exciting times. And also, I mean, the first tour that Dexys Midnight Runners did was the first two-tone tour. Madness did the first half, and we picked it up at the top of, we picked it up in Carlisle and came down the west coast along the bottom and finished in London, because Madness halfway through went to New York because they were signed to Stiff Records. Anyway, and that was a very steep learning curve for us as a band to go in front of these massive audiences. The specials were very good to us, and it's a funny thing that I don't know whether you know, but I was asked by the specials, which turned out to be the last tour that I did with Terry in 2021. We did 21 dates with me and my band as special guests, which was weird because that was the first tour that I did as a 19-year-old. And then in 2021, I was invited to be special guest on that, which was very generous of them to do.
Yeah, that must have been extraordinarily poignant for you, particularly as Terry died not long afterwards.
That's right. Yeah.
When did you feel that the band were heading in an upward trajectory? Was there immediate interest in you as a band, or
no? We slugged away. I mean, you have to remember. I mean, Geno was #1 in 1980. The band was formed in the summer of 1978, and we worked really hard. We managed to get like a monthly or bi-monthly residency in Birmingham at a place called the Imperial Hotel. And then a buzz started to happen. It's there that I kind of remember there's more people and then it became packed. And that's where Jerry Dammers and Horace Panther came to see us and took an interest and kind of said, do you want to be on the two? They just formed the label, the two-tone label through Chrysalis Records. And they offered us, they said, why don't you release something on our label? But we didn't want to, us being us, we didn't want to be part of any kind of scene. We for right or wrong, we kept ourselves very singular and away from the rest of any kind of scene, really. Yeah.
And did you enjoy the success, Pete, or was it troublesome? Well, you know, there's a large group of people in that band. You know, did it take much for disagreement to happen?
Well, one of the skills that you have to learn as a musician, and it was like just 8 blokes and a driver and a tour manager in minibuses. Touring was intense, you know, long tours that we did and spent a lot of time in each other's pockets. One of the skills that you learn is knowing when to sit on your hands and bite your lip, and not, because it can get very heated with a lot of young guys and a lot of egos in the van, and just attitude, just, you know. I was like 19, 20 and all that stuff. But no, it was the thing that I value the most really was travel. I loved seeing new cities. I loved going into Europe. We went to New York when we were all mates and all close, and New York was really exciting then. It was like walking onto the set of Kojak, and it was dangerous and exciting and thrilling. I remember Ray Winston was at the same hotel as us because they just had an American release for Scum, his film, and he was out there promoting that. And he was, I remember speaking to him. But yeah, it was that was the main thing. The fame, I mean, Top of the Pops was really thrilling doing that because I'd grown up with it. Did Magpie, Tiswas, all that stuff, and that was always, you know, I mean, Top of the Pops is a long old day, and they really treated the people like cattle when they finally let the kids in. I remember seeing one sweeping shot. I think it was Simon Bates was the host, and there was a camera on a crane, and the cable was on the floor of the Studio One broadcasting house. And there's this shot up to Simon Bates, hey folks, and all that kind of stuff. And the cable just flips up about 60 people, you know, just took the feet from under them. And then it was just like, right, get up again. Sorry, Lawrence, we go again. Go floor, and all that stuff. But I really, yeah, they were kind of herded in. But yeah, it was thrilling, you know.
And what was Pete? What was the demise of the band, and what was your reason for walking away? I've interviewed quite a few guys from bands, and Rick Witter from Shed 7, you know, just basically said it just fell apart really, and it was a natural end. What was the case for you?
Well, it was part of it is exhaustion really. It wasn't just me that left. It was 5 of us that left in Zurich at the end of 1980, following a decision that we didn't really agree with. It of a single that didn't do anything. Wasn't. I don't know whether it was broadcast. It didn't sell any. That was already recorded in Berlin, I think, while we were on tour. But I mean, looking back on it, it was kind of exhaustion. You know, we were worked really hard, and at the end of there was no kind of falling out as such, but there was just a feeling of that we just needed a break. I think everybody just needed a break, and it's so long ago, you know, Alex, and each time I tell it, it's really hard to dredge up.
Yeah. But there's been this, you know, I'm asking because I know there are fans of the bands. What's the situation now, Pete? Because Kevin's been around, hasn't he, doing stuff in recent times. And I watched a clip this morning of the Jules Holland Hootenary. I think it was 2012, where you look like you're having the time of your lives. It looked like it was great fun to be back. What's the relationship like now, Pete? Are you happy to be away from it, or?
Well, I left after we played Glastonbury in 2014. We worked really hard. We made an album. I played bass, and live I was co-frontman with an album called One Day I'm Going to Soar that we worked really hard on. And I'm proud of all the stuff that we did with that, and some of the shows were great, and it was great fun. It was great fun. And travel again. We did an Australian tour. It was great. It was great to be working with Kevin again. When he asked me, he contacted me and asked me whether I'd be a part of it. Originally in 2003, when we worked together on that and worked on a show, not as a bassist, as a co-frontman. No, that was great. We did some really good work, and he's got an album out now, and I wish him well with that. And I know a couple of the guys that he's working with. But I left in 2012 because to finish the album I was working on, and to work on my stuff. I've got 3 albums out that I'm very proud of. I've got one that's pretty near complete at the moment. You know, it was good. There was no that first incarnation was very confusing. We were all exhausted. The manager at the time was playing one faction against another. I say faction, it wasn't a faction. We knew that I've seen people say stuff about that we were going to carry on without Kevin as Dexys Midnight Runners. Well, that's nonsense. We knew that Kevin had the name registered. And we got no intention of doing that. But the band split, it was, you know, Kevin was talking about stuff like, okay, the brass section need to learn fiddles or learn strings and stuff like that. And that didn't sit comfortably with them. And it was just like, well, that's the end, you know, it's the end of this band. And it's just, so, well, what are we going to do? You know, well, I became very close to still am close to Stoke, the drummer, and we thought we made a really strong rhythm section. We played so much together. We knew that we wanted to carry on, and you know, 5 of us ended splitting up in Zurich. The 2 Kevins flew out of Zurich to do a radio interview in Luxembourg. We drove back through Europe and to London. EMI didn't want anything to do with us. They decided to go with the name Dexys Midnight Runners, which I completely understand, but they wouldn't let us in the building. So we came back, 5 of us came back to the UK and formed what became a band called The Bureau. When we were making our album, to veer off the path a little bit, we shared studio time with Depeche Mode.
Really?
The studio that became the PWL, home of Stock Aitken and Waterman in Borough. And we used to, so they'd finish during the day and we'd pick up at night and alternate. And quite often we'd see them in the Chinese restaurant, or they'd be getting a takeaway while we were just finishing or stuff like that. But they were good guys, and you know, really exciting times. Yeah. I've veered off there. Sorry, Alex, and gone off. But yes. No, the first incarnation of Dexys was, we were all young. We were being played against each other. We were exhausted. You know, I mean, we came back with the Bureau with 5 of us from Dexys, Mick and Jeff and Steve, me and Stoker. Then we auditioned for a singer. We knew that we wanted to be more filmic, more just kind of more towards jazz in a way, but more cinematic is what we wanted, what we were aiming for. We were listening to lots of soundtrack albums influenced by Lalo Schifrin and Jimmy Smith and people like that. And you
had a bit of success, didn't you? But not in the UK. It seems that you was kind of overseas that the Bureau was received.
Ain't that just insane? I mean, that was like, we had a sizable advance from Warner's and sold our publishing to Ireland. And it was like, and we got a great single. The band was sounding great. And then the record company didn't release the album in the UK. So it was crazy. But it was released in Southern Ireland. It did top 5 in Canada, New Zealand, Australia. It's the weirdest thing. I remember seeing Mickey Virtue out of the keyboard player out of UB40 after they did their first Australian tour, and he came back and I bumped into him in town, and he went, "Mate, you couldn't get away from that bloody Only for Sheep. That was on everywhere. That was the video being played in the bars and all that kind of stuff, but not released over here." And the video was quite a, you know, that was filmed on 35mm. It was the guy who just done it was directed by the guy who just done Babylon, a film about the British reggae scene that was out at the time. Keith Allen helped us a lot with that one. He's the guy in the sheep's mask. If for those that are, that's Keith Allen under the mask driving a car. And our dear friend Mike Lay, who's a photographer, he helped a lot with that. But yeah, that was a slog. I mean, the Bureau were pretty well known throughout Europe where the record was released, but it's quite strange that it wasn't released over here.
And Pete, now you've you like you say, you've got 3 albums under your belt, and you've got one. Sounds like you've got one on the in the works. What's life like outside of that kind of Dexys bubble? An artist, I don't know if you're familiar with the work, is a lady called Lone Lady, who's based in Manchester, and she's a fabulous artist, but she talks about the struggles as well. It's not easy. Record labels aren't going to sell vinyl in the quantities that they would in the 80s. So even for an established gentleman like yourself, Pete, who's been in the business for a long time, can you just tell us what it's like actually starting out fresh and producing new music?
Well, it's what's the lady's name from Manchester?
Lone Lady.
Oh, I'll look into that, Alex.
Yeah. She's fabulous.
Okay. Yeah, it's not easy, like everything. I mean, it took a battering from lockdown and all that. Obviously, Brexit didn't help for reaching out into Europe. I know lots of people who work as crew or front of house or lighting that's it's really damaged their money making potential, or make a living. I'm not going to just sit here and bellyache, but it's not easy. I mean, I've got 3 albums out and I've self-financed them. They're on my label. I've got no management. I haven't got an agent, even though wherever I play, I win audiences. And we played the new performance space at the Symphony Hall recently and sold that out. It's difficult, and I mean, there's a lot of people don't expect to pay for music anymore. I mean, I've just done 21 dates with Simon and Oscar. They asked me, their manager contacted me of Ocean Colour Scene. They've just done a tour of lovely theatres, a stripped back, semi-acoustic, billed as an evening with. And that's been me and Andy, my guitarist, have been going out, playing these 650 capacity venues, theatres and it's, it's a 50-minute set. It's kind of like, it's almost like a shared billing thing. Build a special guest, but I get 50 minutes. It's not just half an hour support and gone. So that way you can build a set and you can engage with people and pull them in, and they get to see more of you. I can tell more of my stories, bring it down, not just hit them hard for half an hour and hope that they get it. And it's like, so what we do is, I put petrol in the car, we pick Andy up, equipment in the back, we go up to the lakes or go down south or go wherever we went, Sage at Gateshead, and you do your stuff and you hope that people are going to turn on to what you do and hope that they're going to go out feeling better about themselves than when they walked in, and buy some vinyl and buy some buy CD or buy some vinyl. And that is a direct way of dealing with people. I mean, there's Bandcamp, there's other ways, there's other streaming platforms and podcasts like you're doing, and Patreon and that kind of stuff. But it's not easy. It's really hard, I mean, I'm doing the next live show that I'm doing is on the 14th of September at Serbian Orthodox Chapel in Soho Square, the House of St. Barnabas, it's called.
I've been there, Pete. I've actually been there.
Have you, Alex?
I was there.
I've heard great things about it.
Well, I don't get to London very often, but I was there, and a long-lost relative of mine said, you need to meet me in Barnabas Square. I'm going to show you this amazing place. And lo and behold, she did. And when I saw that you were playing it, I thought, well, I've got to ask Pete about this, because this is it's an amazing little venue, isn't it? It's absolutely beautiful.
It's been recommended. My bass player Lawrence is a member there,
Right.
and he told me about it. He told me that they do a lot of really good work for retraining people that've been on the streets.
Yeah.
It's a charity that, you know. So I was happy to do that. I mean, I've done stuff for shelter and crisis as well, and I think, and that's up to you as well, Alex, for what you do. I had a bit of a dig, and I know that you do really good work.
Thank you.
But yeah, that's on the 14th of September. It's only a small, and I've not been there. I know of the building, but I've not been in. And it was recommended, and they invited me to play there. But it's so I'm pleased to be doing that one in such good things about the venue. But generally, you know, it's making, like with the Ocean Colour Scene tour, and the same with the specials. There's 4 of us in a band. There's overnight stays. You can't, you know, there's petrol to be, minibuses to be hired. It's all that. But it's what I love. It's, you know, there's very few things that I still feel, well, that was good. I was of some use here. I know that, you know, people have gone out feeling good about themselves, and I've got stuff off my chest. I'm singing about things that hopefully people can relate to, and, you know, and I feel useful. There ain't much, but it still feels, you know, like you say, I've been doing this a long time. But if for a moment, if for 1 second I felt ridiculous or insincere or, you know, phony in any way while I was doing what I was doing, I'd stop. But thankfully, touch wood, thankfully that hasn't come to me yet, and I still really enjoy crafting music, working with musicians and doing it. It's just pulling money out the other end. That's the difficult bit.
Yeah. Do you know, Pete, I've absolutely loved talking to you. I could talk to you I could talk to you for hours, but we're about 15 minutes over already, but I love talking music, and you know, it's been nostalgic for me to talk to you, but it's been fascinating as well. And so the tickets still available for the gig in Soho Square.
If you Google House of St. Barnabas events, or look at, they've got a Facebook page, they've got a Twitter page. There's a few tickets left. I think it's a 75 capacity room. I've got to speak to them this afternoon. I think we're going to coordinate a push across social medias in the 2 weeks coming up to the show. I know that there's people have contacted me and who've already got tickets, but it should be good. It's me and my band. We're doing it 4-handed. It's slightly stripped back. The full band is 6 people. We're doing it 4-handed for this one because it's a small space. And the same as for those that saw us with the specials, that's how we did it with the specials. And it's just, yeah, it should be good. It's a selection of stuff out from my albums, and you know, yeah, it'll be great.
Well, Pete, thanks so much for coming on. Check out, Pete's got a website. You'll find him on social media. Check out the new music. Don't just live in the past, because the Dexys stuff is great, but I've been listening to a lot of your stuff this week, Pete, and it's good stuff. You don't need me to tell you that. It's good stuff, and I've really enjoyed it. Thanks,
Alex.
Thank you so much.
That's no problem. All the best, mate.